Good morning, everyone. My name is Leo Andre Crisologo. I'm a mathematics teacher from the Philippine Science High School main campus, and I want to share with you today how I implemented my asynchronous classes using KHub and via pre-recorded lesson videos. Faced with the reality that we had to teach the current school year under a pandemic, our academic response has been to shift to online modalities. KHub has been rolled out to be our LMS so that we'll have a consistent platform for all students across all campuses. The teachers work together to develop learning guides, which were then distributed to the students so they will have access to lessons regardless if they had access to internet or not. On top of all these, at least in the main campus, the teachers were granted autonomy to choose how they will deliver their lessons. Of course, they have the learning guides to guide them. That's one resource that we could use. But we were not restricted on what else we could use to deliver the lessons. And this is important because it allowed me to explore the use of videos in delivering my lectures. Of course, at this point, we all know what the difference between synchronous and asynchronous modes of delivering our lessons are. But just to highlight some key points, in a synchronous mode of teaching, students will be able to ask questions immediately, teachers can provide immediate feedback, and there will be opportunities for interaction among students. So these are the positive points of conducting synchronous classes. However, for asynchronous classes, there will be an emphasis on student agency in determining their own learning schedule. For my classmates in ADL, you might remember that they put a special emphasis on asynchronous classes, especially when discussing complex concepts, because this will allow students more time to process or to think about the ideas that we've shared. So I felt that this fit very well in lectures about specific concepts in mathematics. So I would like to share how I implemented both synchronous and asynchronous modes in my classes with a heavy emphasis on the asynchronous mode. Our schedule in the main campus was that we had one meeting per section for the subject per week. So I had to make the most out of that one session. During my scheduled class time, I spent my time waiting on a Discord server that I made for my four classes. So there's only one server and it is configured in such a way that there are different chat rooms for each of my four sections. And what I do is I wait for my students to interact and engage with me there. So if they have questions with the lessons or with the assessments, they know that I am available during class time in the Discord server. Whenever they need to schedule a consultation, then that is also where we conduct our consultations. Because in Discord, you could set up a voice chat, you could set up a video call, and sharing your screen. It's basically like Google Meet. Now, the bulk of what I want to share with you is how I deliver my asynchronous lessons. So let's go to KHub. I'll open up my lesson in glide transformations. There's a lesson page on my KHub, and the first thing that the students will encounter is the video of the lesson. And they're expected to watch this. Of course, they're not expected to watch this in this small rectangle. They're expected to zoom in and watch the video on full screen. There'll be some audio. Some glide reflection transformation, and then we'll demonstrate glide reflections with software tools and illustrate glide reflections sa Korean film. So I use code switching. I switch from Filipino to English because this is the same way I conduct my lessons in the classroom. Now, after they watch the video, on the lesson page, there are lesson notes containing the material discussed in the video in case the students need to have a quick review or to have a quick reference of what was discussed in the lesson. And afterwards, expected to take an exercise using the quiz functions of KHub, and they can use this to show what they learned. This is also how we conduct our assessments and our exams. And after they go through all these four video lessons, they have to take these activities, either to show what they learned or to demonstrate that they've actually watched the videos. I have collected these videos in YouTube so that they can be available for students even if they're outside of KHub. At the same time, they're available for anyone who may wish to use the videos for their own lessons, regardless if they're affiliated with Philippine Science High School or not. For the previous school year's lessons, there are 60 videos that I uploaded in my YouTube channel, and this is equivalent to around 12 hours of content. Now, let me show you the process of how I create the videos and how I assign them to my students. So first, I have to prepare my slides. Mostly, if I could, I would use the old slides that I have from the previous school years, but most of the time I had to make new ones or edit my old slides. Because the slides I had from the previous school years, they required me to interact with the lesson with either the whiteboard, the blackboard, or by soliciting recitation from the students. But these videos are meant to be consumed asynchronously. My students could choose to watch these videos outside of our class hours. So I had to make sure that all the content was there, and if they go back and review the videos, all the information would be there for them. I also had to make sure that the sizes are large enough to be seen on the screen since they won't be projected to a wall. And I also had to make space where I would put my face. Now at the start I was pondering whether to record myself or just maybe do a voiceover, but I decided that it might be better if the students can see me, and I hope that my students seeing my face in the videos would somehow feel a connection with me, even if we're not in the same room together. Now, once the slides are prepared, I move on to recording myself, narrating, or doing the lecture for the lesson. Now, I used OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. It's software that's used mostly by game streamers because it allowed them to superimpose their voices, their faces over their video streams and stream it live over the internet. But it also allows you to record yourself. So that's what I use it for. So you could simultaneously see me and my slides. Now there are more features to OBS than what I was able to use. For instance, now I know how to use a green screen and I could do what I'm doing right now. But back then, I wasn't able to take the time to learn this process. So I was recording in my kitchen, and most of the time the refrigerator can be seen behind me. And I guess that's just something my students had to deal with. Once the recording's done, I move on to editing. For editing, I used iMovie. This is the editing software bundled with my MacBook. And mostly I just did cuts. I cut out parts from my video where I made mistakes, where I took pauses that were too long or were just irrelevant. Once the editing is done, I would upload it to YouTube. Now, I decided to upload it to YouTube instead of just in KHub because YouTube is already optimized for streaming videos. Also, I didn't want to take up a lot of disk space in the KHub server. It also had the added benefit of having my students interact with my videos outside of KHub if they choose to do so. There are actually several of them who did that. I also meant to keep it there so I would be able to use it in succeeding school years if I teach this subject again. Now, once they're uploaded in YouTube, I would embed them in the lesson pages on my KHub and assign them to my students. Now, there were several challenges that I had to overcome in embarking on this project. I sort of got myself committed to delivering videos over the course of the school year. Since implementing it in the first quarter, my students have sort of become accustomed to this manner of lecture delivery, of lesson delivery, and I had to go through with it all the way into the fourth quarter. So some technical challenges that I had to deal with was the first one, I wasn't proficient in the recording and editing software, and I had to take up a lot of time at the start going through the learning curve of learning OBS, of figuring out what works and what doesn't work in terms of recording. I was also limited in terms of quality of audio and video with my equipment. I only had the webcam on my laptop, but I had to settle with the audio of the microphone of my laptop. And those were not really the best audio tools available for me. There was a sort of a background hum that you always hear in my previous videos. And of course, I think I mentioned this earlier, even if I had a lot of material from my previous years of teaching the subject, I still had to modify everything to make sure that they fit with the theme of the videos that I was presenting, that the fonts were visible, the text was visible in the video screen. There were also some environmental challenges. I don't have a dedicated room at my house for recording videos. We live in a small place. I did my recordings in the kitchen and I had to work with daylight because I didn't have my own lighting setup. So I could only record when there's sunlight and I'm sitting in front of a window. Once I tried recording outdoors so that my background would be trees. However, the wind noise was so bad that I wasn't really able to use a lot of my earlier recordings. And finally, there were also challenges with implementing using videos for asynchronous lessons. First, I had the limited production time. I had to provide a new lesson every week, so that sort of left me with 1 week to create my slides, to record and edit my videos and post them up in KHub. This meant that when there are weeks for assessments like periodic exams for or long exams, I should use that time to make my videos because that would allow me to have a longer turnaround time for my next lesson. Moving to an asynchronous mode of lectures also takes away the class discussion aspect. For a lot of the concepts that I teach, I would usually throw them to the students and have them make connections between concepts. And I wasn't really able to do that in this scenario. And it's more difficult to follow up on students who don't engage with the lesson material because I wouldn't know if they're engaging or not until after the assessments. In order to make sure that I was able to overcome these challenges and that this approach that I decided to take for the previous school year was working and it was not detrimental to the students, I made sure to get feedback from them, how they find having their lessons delivered over videos instead of synchronous lectures. And at the end of the school year, I gave a simple questionnaire. So even though I had 4 sections, I only had 46 respondents. On the question whether the teacher's teaching methods were effective, I had 100% positive response, 100% na yes. I also asked if the teacher was able to effectively explain and illustrate the course concepts. I had 98% positive responses. I also asked if the lesson videos were able to increase their knowledge and skills. And it also received a 100% affirmative response. Now, here I gave a direct question if they would prefer the asynchronous lesson delivery via videos over synchronous lessons. Here I got more negative responses. So I have 6.5% of the students saying that they would prefer asynchronous interaction because I guess the students would like to ask questions, make clarifications. But still, 93% would prefer pre-recorded lesson videos delivered asynchronously. And these results I took to be confirmation that the mode that I chose to use, asynchronous lessons via video lectures, was something that was appreciated and liked by my students. Now, my recommendations for teachers who may want to pursue a similar approach to asynchronous classes or would like to make their own videos is one, determine what you would want to do during your asynchronous time and your synchronous time. And my recommendation would be to use the asynchronous time for lectures and, of course, assessments and exercises, and reserve that period for synchronous classes for supervised activities. So this could be consultations, this could be problem solving sessions with either a select number of students or with the entire class. But essentially, keep that synchronous period for activities that are best supervised. I would also encourage everyone to develop their own lesson videos, especially if we're still doing distance learning for this school year, because that allowed me to connect with my students more than if I simply curated videos that are already available online. Now, of course, if you go this route, you have to recognize that content creation is very, very time consuming. There's a very steep learning curve at the start. And even once you get to the point of proficiency where you can do your basic videos, it will still take up a lot of time. I would also recommend that when we make videos, we focus on accuracy and correctness of the content and not so much on making it flashy or maybe incorporating memes or other fun material, because I think at this point the students would appreciate if we respected their time and just limited the amount of required time that they are expected to interact with the videos to that which is necessary for them to understand the lesson. Not to say that we shouldn't include occasionally some humor or some interesting points, but generally the focus should be on the content. And this I learned through feedback from my students that I needed to keep my video lesson short. At first, I treated the creation of lessons as a full lecture. So I lectured the concept, then I went through 3 or 4 examples, and the videos took anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes which I thought was fine. But for this medium, we have to recognize that it's difficult for our students to stay focused on a 30-minute lesson. So I learned to cut my lessons into at most 10 to 12 minutes. And if a particular lesson will extend past that, then I split the videos into 2 or 3 cuts. So they have a logical break in between videos. And when they do reviews, they don't have to review through 30 minutes, 40 minutes worth of material. And finally, since this is meant to be a sharing session, there wasn't really a research conducted if this was like the best practice compared to synchronous classes. Personally, I'd be very interested in a formal conduct of research on whether this is a better method than conducting synchronous lectures. Now, in conclusion, if a teacher would like to undertake something like this, you have to be cognizant that there will be a steep learning curve. You have to learn how to use the software, how to edit the videos, how to record the videos. It's also a design aspect where you have to rework your slides, your existing material to optimize them for a video presentation. You might also feel a lot of pressure with having to release 1 or 2 or 3 lesson videos per week, although there will be breaks and you will get faster, you will get better, but there is really that pressure. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity for growth. I learned a lot in taking on this challenge of producing videos. Things I didn't know before, skills I didn't have before, and now I have a bit of familiarity with tools like OBS. I have since moved on from iMovie to a different video editing software. It's called DaVinci Resolve. It's also free, but it has more features, although it's a bit more difficult to use. And these skills can be applied outside of our teaching. Who knows where we could use them later on. But I think the best part of taking this challenge of producing videos is the huge amount of student appreciation that I received. Students felt I respected their time, that I believed that they were capable of having some agency in their own time and go through the lectures, even if I'm not there to supervise them. That's also made the sync sessions more productive by limiting it to supervised activities, consultation, or processing student questions. Most of the time, we didn't even have to use up the entire period. And if there are no questions, I could use that time to prepare for my next video lesson. On multiple instances, some students have mentioned how they appreciated the effort that went into making the videos, that it allowed them to review the lessons quickly. I saw some comments where they were recommending this approach to their other teachers. And so, despite the challenges that we all experienced in the past school year in terms of lesson delivery, I felt that this approach was very, very effective. Although more formal research should be done to verify if that is indeed the case. Our institution had been very supportive of my efforts. Through them, I was featured in a few news articles. There was even a feature on CNN. And we established a partnership with other DOST agencies, deploy the videos to far-flung remote places that don't have internet access through standalone kiosks containing, among other lessons, among other content, the videos that I made for Math 3. Through the efforts of the PSHSS system, we're able to work together to get the content copyrighted. So there really is support for initiatives like this. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm now available for questions.